Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a while since we have done a Yona of the Dawn review, and for once, that is not on me. That is not on me. Chapter 272 has finally dropped. It just took a while. There was a small break, hiatus, whatever you want to call it. But now Akatsuki no Yona, chapter 272 is finally here. So let's talk about it. Let's review it. The big thing or takeaway from this chapter is the ending part. Now, maybe this is obvious to some people, but I'm a little confused on what this means, represents, or maybe it's, as I said, very obvious to some, while not so obvious to me. However, the rest of the chapter is pretty straightforward. We continue off with the end of the last chapter, which I did have to go back and just reread chapter 271, because I don't know if any of you had to do that, but I was a little like, whoa, okay, where did we leave off again? What exactly is happening here? So I definitely had to reread 271 before reading 272, because I was a little lost. But it pretty much continues off on the fact that soo-won, of course, is bleeding profusely. He's not looking good. Of course, the Crimson Dragon illness, all these other factors. The other dragons are also still there. The dragon gods, after Yona was discussing, like, why don't you come to Earth? Like, I'm not going to heaven. I can't go to heaven, but we need to wait for the white dragon god to reappear. We need to wait for Hawk to reappear and stuff like that. These things are going to happen, and I want you to wait here with me. This sort of, because she made the argument that you wouldn't be able to come here as dragons, or the dragon gods in 271 said, we are not going to be able to, gods cannot live, it's not stable to live on Earth. Seven Deadly Sins is the same premise. When you have the level of a god, it destabilizes, the natural order of things and stuff, and there's certain realms and planes of existence where they cannot live. So she made the argument, you wouldn't be gods. You would come down like the Crimson Dragon King once did. You would take human form and you'd have those limitations, but you could live with us and we could wait for the ones that you love to also come back and stuff. This implies that Yona believes the dragon gods know exactly how to pull this off. Is there some form of ritual? Is there a time limit? Like, what's the deal with how the Crimson Dragon King originally did this? And we're assuming that the Crimson Dragon King was once a literal red dragon god, just like the other ones we've seen here, and chose human form, and it seemed to be just a boom, easy, done. Assuming that is the case, obviously I don't think this plot point was necessarily forgotten. The dragon gods didn't exactly agree, and we focus more on soo-won, and now the other dragon gods here at the beginning of this chapter are crumbling away. They're already failing and falling and stuff, right? So in the first opening page, it's just like, they're just like, Crimson Dragon King, we don't wish to disappear, we need to clump, you know what I mean? Like, they're slowly, like, it's almost like shattered glass looking thing, like they're sort of like fading and crumbling away and stuff like that. Kija and jae-ha are noticing it. It's happened apparently with the white dragon god as well, like the same way that the white dragon god disappeared is the same thing that's happening here, and they're just like, we don't want this to happen. They seemingly are shattering and then fall. Their entire body seems to fall to the ground while Yona watches. They don't seem to be completely destroyed, because the last we see of them is that their bodies have fallen to the floor, and then after one last little roar or weak roar out of them on the ground, then the structure starts to crumble around them and stuff. The divine protection of the dragon gods is now disappearing, and there's no holy plot armor, if you will. There's no holy divine protection happening to protect all our characters here anymore, and the structure is mortal once more, if you will. So everything starts to crumble. Of course, Kija's still not used to the fact he doesn't have his arm anymore. He can't really protect anything. Zeno manages to push him out of the way, gets toppled and stuff like that. They all wake back up initially, and they are saved here, but of course Zeno is trapped underneath the debris, saving Kija. Now, there is a scene in between, and I don't get the purpose of this scene. I don't know why it's here, and I don't know what it's supposed to symbolize or represent, because it doesn't do or solve anything yet. As I said, I'm not going to criticize it as an unnecessary scene unless it comes back to us in later chapters. But for some reason, as things are crumbling and Yona is fully conscious, she doesn't get knocked out of anything. She just is looking at soo-won's unconscious face and just like, soo-won, you have to like wake up, or whatever she's trying to do. She's yelling his name, and then boom, she goes into like a vision-like state where she's seeing basically purgatory. In like the Divine Comedy, she's seeing a version of that. They're like ghost-like figures. Pirates of the Caribbean 3 did this sort of idea. They're not really interactable, you know. She's seeing it like almost through a piece of glass, and she can't go forward. She can't interact, but she's seeing the wisps and the ghosts of all the departed people. And we see a lot of familiar faces that we hadn't seen in a while. The original Fire Tribe's leader there, I forget his name, the one that Yona's first major kill, the bandit leader, the ship evil pirate captain guy. We see some of the Zing people. We see we see the bad guys, we see the good guys, we see basically everybody here, right? And in one small way or another, she recognizes what this must be. This is where the departed go, and the line is, I don't want to find him here. She's terrified that she's going to see Hawk's ghost here. That even though Hawk promised, I will get out of this chalice somehow, I will be back some way, somehow I will find you, the star-crossed lovers sort of idea, right? Very poetic, very romantic. We like that. And she does not see Hawk. So that's a good thing, right? But she does believe she sees the back of her mother and cries out to her and tries to, reach her and talk to her and stuff. But there's no acknowledgement really by any of the ghosts. She sees her father and her uncle and stuff as well. But nobody says anything. She doesn't actually interact with anybody, and then she slowly wakes back up from this vision. As I said, it sort of came out of nowhere, and nothing was done or solved by seeing this. She went to the land of the dead, saw them for a brief instant, and nothing was said or done. Nothing that we didn't get new information, and this does nothing to progress Yona's thought process forward, unless we want to make the argument here that, once again, this scene could be brought up later, and it could have relevance later, but right now it seems random, out of place, and didn't do anything for either in-universe or for us, the readers, because it's just confirming people we already knew to be dead, that Yona knew to be dead, and that Hawk is not dead. So the only thing I can think of here is that she did not see Hawk there, so this will double down or renew her faith in the fact that Hawk is still out there somewhere alive, because she did not see him in the land of the departed. That's the only thing I can see relevant here, and if that's what it's trying to do, then I think that's sort of, if that's the purpose of this scene, then it's taking away some of Yona's agency and her faith and trust in Hawk, and that's actually that's a minus point, not a positive point in my opinion, because we want to see Yona as having faith. Hawk promised her, and she's going to hold him to his word. She doesn't need to see it. It's, once again, it's about having faith. It's the difference between people who don't have faith versus people who have faith. So many religious people, they don't need to see their gods to believe in them and to know that they're out there from their perspective, right? It's called having faith and belief. And Yona, in Hawk's case, should have this without the confirmation with her eyes, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, as I said, if you guys could tell me what you think this scene meant, or is it a scene that's going to be relevant later? I'm just not sure the purpose of going for 5 seconds to the land of the dead. I'm not seeing the reason for this. Anyways, she snaps back out of it as Shina basically says, "Hey, wake up, Yona." "Oh, Yona, yeah, we're good." So anyways, they all realize that they were saved, except for Zeno. Of course, Zeno was trapped under the columns and the debris and stuff like that. Of course, but he can't die, as we know. But still, the Yellow Dragon is quite in turmoil right now, obviously, and still wants... still is after soo-won's blood, in a sense here, which, once again, it's very odd. At first, Zeno's like, "Oh, the dragon has now calmed down somewhat inside of me, but it's going to rear its ugly head again," sort of thing. So I'm not sure what's going on there exactly, but Zeno is trapped underneath with the power, bubbling with these, like, dragon god powers that are going out of whack, out of control, and saying that the instant the coffin of the Crimson Dragon King was crushed, his body started to swell, and he thinks that maybe the yellow dragon is trying to take over his body, so maybe with the destruction of the sarcophagus, that's renewed the anger in the yellow dragon. That's where I'm sort of going with, and they're not exactly sure. Zeno says, I haven't been able to communicate ever since we left the chalice and stuff. I haven't been able to communicate with the yellow dragon, which I'm not sure. Is that accurate? I didn't go back and check, but I thought when he first came back out to confront the dragons and protect soo-won, I thought he did say, like the thoughts of the yellow dragon were still, like the yellow dragon wasn't physically there, but was still communicating inside of Zeno's mind. I could be wrong about that, and I'll have to go back and check. But either way, it's not really that. Doesn't matter one way or another. It would just be like a small retcon for no reason there. Either way, he says, like, trying to kill the Mr. By trying to kill soo-won, he said it broke a contract, and it, as a result, all of a sudden, the yellow dragon has now become a wicked god. And I'm like, okay, this is sort of coming out of nowhere. The yellow dragon was the only one to be quote-unquote, like, purified or have some sense of self and wasn't super obsessed, and the only reason, and that was his logic, the only reason being is being able to see everything happen through Zeno's eyes, and being a part of that sort of mellowed him out. But now all of a sudden, for just doing this one act, now all of a sudden he's become a wicked god. Like, all of a sudden, okay, I was sort of on the fence, and now, boom, I'm full on Darth Vader. And it's like, okay, it's a little much. Once again, because this is a very soft magic system, and, with being a soft magic system, there are so many unexplained things, and we're just supposed to accept them. Like, the reason being is a contract. But what contract was this? I don't remember the yellow dragon making a contract with soo-won, or the dragon gods making a contract with soo-won's bloodline. If that were the case, none of them would have been able to touch soo-won in the first place. So the whole idea that he broke a contract, what contract? Where are the rules? When was this made? And how is it supposed to meant to be enforced versus not? What's the punishment here? So, once again, this is very, as I said, one of the biggest issues with a soft magic system is when the magic system itself, soft magic systems are great. They're using things like Lord of the Rings and stuff. But the problem is that when you tie it into plot, when you tie it into either plot convenience, plot armor, just for plot narrative purposes to advance the plot, when you tie your soft magic system into that, you can't go full soft. You sort of have to utilize a couple of rules. You have to establish the rules. Otherwise, it comes out of nowhere and it feels like a Deus Ex Machina. It feels like a plot device. It's like, oh, we want this to happen, so this is what we're just going to say without any foreshadowing, without any establishment prior. And that's sort of, for me, what's kind of happening here with this line. Not crazy about it. I hope it's not relevant later on. I hope it's just another passing line. Sort of like, once again, the scene with the Land of the Dead. I hope it's like, okay, that's there, and it's not really going to be relevant for the rest of it. It's just like, okay, he can't talk to the yellow dragon anymore, and Zeno might end up actually gone by the end of this. Okay, fine, dandy. That's sort of, well, not fine, dandy. I want Zeno to finally live out his life normally, just one lifetime left, sort of idea with Yona and the rest of the dragons, and then they all end naturally, right? But we'll have to wait and see here. So after this, he's just like, I have no idea, if I'm going to go out of control, if my wounds heal. I can't even tell that. Will my body, because his body's all, as we saw, warped and stuff like that, will his body go back to normal after a certain amount of time? Yona's trying to figure out a way to save him. He's not sure. Of course, Zeno is trapped, so they can't really go anywhere. They are unable to locate, of course, because of all the collapse and the rubble. They don't know what happened to the blue and green dragon gods. As I said, last time we saw them was that final panel of them laying on the ground, not completely crumbled away yet. So they're not quite sure what to do, but they know, like Zeno says, we need to get soo-won out of here. Otherwise, he's going to die. So you guys need to go ahead. Now, this is where initially Shina is the one to say, well, I will take him, because, of course, jae-ha, I don't know how jae-ha's standing on one leg. I really don't. He seems to have no mobility issues. Meanwhile, that's got to be exhausting, balancing yourself on one leg after all this time of having 2 legs. So he doesn't have one of his legs. Kija doesn't have an arm, but jae-ha's like, oh yeah, I can carry him just fine. It's like, no, you can't. And Kija's like, yeah, I'll do it with one arm. It's like, guys, and Shin-ha is even like, I'll take him on my back. How about that? He also feels bad for the fact that the blue dragon took over, and he goes, my memories of being a dragon are fuzzy, but I'm the one who bit and attacked his shoulder in the first place, and he feels bad about that. This is his sort of small way of making amends, because it is referenced here. Now this is where Kija and jae-ha do, Shin-ha tells him to stay by Zeno's side, and they agree to it, and they're like, absolutely, and Zeno's like, no, you know, so Yona is the one who has to lead him, of course, because Shin-ha is blind, because his eyes were taken from him. So now Yona, Shin-ha, and soo-won are trying to find a way out of the rubble, while the other 3 dragons stay behind. Zeno remarks that you guys have to leave me, you know, don't worry about me, but you guys are wounded too, you know, your arm and leg missing, that must be really terrible for you. And they're just like, yeah, no, we're just going to chill here with our brother. We're good. So they end up leaving. Zeno tries to convince them to go. And they sort of remark the same thing that I understand exactly what they're trying to say. They're like, right now we got this pit in the bottom of our stomach. And it feels like if we leave you and come back, there'll be no trace of you. There'll be no sign of you. And we'll never see you again sort of idea. Like right now we feel like if we lose sight of you, we'll never find you again. So we're just staying here where we can keep an eye on you, where we know where you are, we know what happens to you. We're not letting you out of our sight, sort of idea, right? And, you know, we're out of the, you know, we're finally out of the chalice. You know, you have to accept that you're going to stay with us. And, you know, if the yellow dragon goes wild, I guess we'll deal with that when it comes, sort of idea, you know? So Zeno sort of has to, accept this, you know, saying like it's a nice little moment between them, saying like you guys are the most stubborn, annoying people I've ever met in my life. And they're like, in your whole life? Wow, that's almost impressive. That's a compliment. You've been alive for like 2 millennia. So yeah, that's a really impressive thing. So either way, we jump over to Shin-ha and Yona making their way slowly but surely, trying to get out of the mausoleum and stuff. It's obviously they're just having to make slow progress because Shin-ha's blind and everything like that. So we get an inner monologue from Yona trying to figure everything out. Like, she's regretting the fact that she couldn't get through to the dragon gods, and right now, like, everyone's fears and hopes are on her shoulders, and she doesn't know what the right answer is. She doesn't know what to do, and now she's slowly but surely trying to make her way out. Now the entrance that they came in from is now blocked, and immediately Shin-ha bellows and says, is anybody there? Can anybody hear me? If you're here, answer me! And he's just, you know, and for Shin-ha to yell, to bellow like that, he does acknowledge that and Ki-sook is actually right there, and Yon is there, and Lily's there and stuff. They're right there at the entrance. They're like, move away. Oh, Princess Yona, excellent. Move away. Now that we know you're alive, we are immediately going to get this robot move ASAP. And it's like, Squad 35, you come here. And Squad, you 2 men, do this, do that, and all this stuff. Shin-ha is acknowledged by Yona, like, I've never heard you yell like that. But even so, I like this, but I also don't. Tell me what you guys think about this part. It's the fact that Shin-ha does this very out of character, because he's so soft-spoken and he usually doesn't speak up, period. You know, you could argue the man to mute. Most people that meet him outside of, you know, the Happy Hungry Bunch would assume that the Blue Dragon was mute. You know, it wouldn't shock me if most people were like, I've never heard the Blue Dragon talk before. You know what I mean? Like, that would be the common thing. He's not only soft-spoken, he rarely speaks at all. And for him to bellow and yell is very big character development. And I like the initial, when he says, basically, you know, I've never heard you speak like that sort of idea. And he says, well, the fact is that I could sense human beings. You know, I could sense them. I could feel the presence of people close by and outside. So, you know, that's why I made sure that they could hear us. What I don't like about that is that it sort of takes away from the fact that he says, you know, it's because she mentions it was the first time I've ever heard you raise your voice like that. He goes, but you already have so many companions and comrades beside you, you know, and it's amazing. So I think it's okay to cry for help when you're in need. Like, you should know that. I'm sure everyone wants to help you. Everyone wants to lend you their strength. And if they can help you in any way, they want to help you. So don't be afraid to cry out and ask for help. I like the sentiment, and I like that Shin-ah let go of his own anxiety or reservations or whatever you want to call it, why Shin-ah is so soft-spoken. But he, as a very introverted person, for the sake of Yona, he went full extrovert there for that moment, because he goes, let's not waste time. I like the idea that he did that almost without knowing if anybody was there, but he screamed nonetheless because he's there to help Yona. I like that a little bit more, and I think the fact that he knew people were there that would hear him takes away from that slightly. I do feel like that, the moment is kind of, once again, it's still a good moment, still a good character moment for Shin-ah and stuff like this, while Yona's crying and stuff, and he's sort of giving her a pep talk, a pick-me-up. It's a tiny bit watered down by that. Is that just me, or do you guys feel that? Well, I don't know. Anyways, maybe I'm just being too nitpicky about that, but for me, it's just like, we didn't need that line. The rest of the scene and dialogue works fantastically without that line, so anyways, and then he talks, as I said, about soo-won and his shoulder and all these things, but we get the nice moment where he says, Yona, you're a strong person with the power to help and forgive others. This is why everyone loves you. This is why everyone has followed you, and I will always follow the path that you've chosen alongside my brothers, because that's why we follow you, because we believe that you're right and your path is the correct path to peace and happiness and all, whatever, right? So at the end of the day, the final part of the chapter, we have Yona just listening to Shin-ah's words, which this is part of what makes Yona a really good character, is that she's still a teenage girl, but she's been through a lot. So we still have these moments of weakness in her and self-doubt. And I believe that even when people get older, the wisest of people and the smartest people still have self-doubt, have insecurities, and they don't always think, maybe I'm wrong. It's to acknowledge that they could be wrong, or they don't know what the right decision is, but when push comes to shove, they make a call. They're not stunned into inaction by the fear of making a wrong decision. And from an outsider's perspective, we think of these people as almost infallible, and a lot of people view Yona this way. But she herself doesn't think, sometimes she's very confident in her decisions, and they're pretty obvious on paper. But sometimes they're very difficult ones, and she is unsure of herself, and she doesn't know what to do. And I think that's what makes her a very compelling character, because even this far into the manga, almost 300 chapters, and she still needs help from people like Shin-ah, and to not only her companions to say, like, you can rely on us, but you should be able to ask for help. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help, to lean on other people, and not just us, everyone, because they want to help you, So that's a really nice sentiment here at the end of the chapter, saying, even if this country were to go to ruin tomorrow, we'll get treatment for our injuries if we're hurt, and we'll eat if we're hungry, and she acknowledges that I'll wait here for Hawk's return. Once again, that's nice and sweet, and I hope that because the scene with the purgatory was not brought up in this speech, I'm glad for that, because, as I said, I personally think it would take away from her faith and trust in Hawk if she needed to see with her own eyes that he's not in the land of the dead, so he must be alive, and that's why she holds the conviction. I like the idea that she holds this conviction because she believes Hawk at his word, which she should, he's Hawk. So, anyways, so last page of the chapter is that she's just waiting and, looking up at the heavens, and all the black clouds are saying, so please, please, come back to me, come back to us. And we get this gorgeous double-page spread of the sun shining. We don't know where this is, but it, and we have no acknowledgement of where this is, but then we see, like, the open sea. It's reminding me of Final Fantasy VIII opening, we see this, like, beach and this open sea and all the clouds and the bright blue skies with these gorgeous white clouds and stuff, and we see a hand slowly, like someone laying there. It's reminding me of Two Towers, Aragorn there, just lying in the riverbed, and boom, we see somebody's there, and dun dun dun, final page is just white background. Gotta love Kubo for that. But the white background and just a face opening up, coming back to his senses. This place is. Who is this person? My first thought, Crimson Dragon King. Because this looks nothing like Hawk. Okay? So, what throws me off about this is that, as I said at the beginning, I believe I mentioned this, that this is the one that, who is this? And I'm asking you, the fans. To me, this looks like the Crimson Dragon King. Long hair, not full dark, like it's got that reddish hue tone, it's got that grayish medium tone like Yona's hair and stuff. The hair's the right length, everything looks correct, and if this is the heaven or paradise or whatever, you know, where they went into the chalice, this is what it originally looked like, and every time we saw it other than when it was the Sea of Blood, it looked like this. Beautiful, you know, blue skies and a clear, you know, ocean sort of idea. This is what it has looked like every time we saw flashbacks and stuff like that. Could this be the Crimson Dragon King waking up? Now that his sarcophagus is gone, has his soul finally left Earth and now returned to the heavens? I don't know. I have no idea how this is supposed to work. Or is this supposed to be Hawk, and it's been a number of years and his hair has grown, but it took a long time for him to finally wake up, because it's coming back to his senses. That place is. So coming back to his senses. Whose senses? The Crimson Dragon King's senses? Hawk's senses? But what do they mean by coming back to his senses? Hawk never lost his senses. Last time we saw him, he was fighting a white dragon god. You know, he didn't... Well, I don't even think we saw him lose consciousness. So is it just the translation that's got me a little perturbed there? Am I like, okay, I'm taking that too literally, like coming back to his senses, like he went crazy or he's been asleep for a very long time, now he's woken up? But if this is meant to be Hawk, and it's just a weird shading choice on the hair, plus growing his hair long, and it's not the Crimson Dragon King, then the other option to me is soo-won. Once again, the hair color is throwing me off. If this is soo-won who's finally waking up, could it be that his hair turned red because he's now the rightful king of any... I don't know. Like, could his hair turn... Is this a Rapunzel thing? Hair was blonde because of the powers and turned the normal brunette, you know? Is this supposed to be soo-won coming back to his senses, waking up, and his hair turned red finally to acknowledge his bloodline or something? I don't know. As I said, the three possibilities, but none of them fully make sense. I'm gonna right now, and the only reason I say Hawk is because she's looking up, because the way it's leading up to it's, I'll wait here for your return. I'll protect everyone in this place you will come back to. So please, please. So Yona is right now acknowledging Hawk. Hawk, please return to me. And next shot, we see a man waking up. Like, you know, so 99% sure it's meant to be Hawk, but what's with they're throwing me off with the length of the hair and the color choice of the hair. And if this is Hawk, then it would make sense, because as people said, we've seen as early as the first arc of the series and stuff, we saw Yona acknowledge as this person. We did not see Hawk beside her. So people are like, okay, Hawk dies, but in the story, Hawk this, Hawk that. But this could be a whole return thing. Hawk returns. It could be like a Hellsing thing, where Alucard doesn't return for like a decade or two. It takes him like 20 years to come back, but he eventually does. So Yona has grown into a leader and a person and stuff like that. You know, and a queen in her own right and stuff, and she's a full adult with the armor and the sword and the whole bit, and she's got her army men, and she's still waiting for her lover to return, and maybe it just takes Hawk a dozen years to return, but he will return, and that way it doesn't take away from anything we've seen in the series. Actual scenes that we've seen still make sense that Hawk was not there or in them, because, you know, this is a perfect reason as to why. It took Hawk years, not just months, but years to finally wake up in the realm of paradise and find a way to return from the realm of the chalice. Alright, sure. But as I said, once again, what's with the hair color if this is meant to be Hawk? The length I get. The length makes sense if this is supposed to be time passing. Time has passed and it's been many, many years. Of course, by the time Hawk wakes up, his hair would be longer. But why the color change? You know? Like, and as I said, it's a nice fade and all that stuff, but once again, when you do this, as pretty as it looks, you can't just change a character's hair color tone because you want the page to pop a little bit more. Hawk's hair has always been black. So if it's not black, this doesn't look like him, and that's why, as I said, is this supposed to be the Crimson Dragon King waking up in heaven? Is it Soo-won waking up and for some reason his hair went from blonde to red? Is it Hawk and he's growing his hair long and it's just a really bad tonal color decision on the manga? I have no idea. But those are my 3 theories as to who the hell this is supposed to be. So, as I said, and none of them are perfect. None of them are perfect. It makes the most sense for it to be Hawk, but why does he have the red hair? Only panel in 272 chapters where Hawk's hair color would have changed. Soo-won, once again, a weaker choice, but it could be Soo-won waking up. It's the most unlikely choice that his hair would randomly turn from blonde to red. But I'm sure they could explain that away with the destruction of the mausoleum. Shit went nuts, you know. We could make an argument for that. Like, maybe this is the significance that, you know, because all the people that were suffering from the Crimson Dragon illness all happen to have blonde and light hair. Maybe this is signifying the end of the Crimson Dragon illness now that has all been basically settled and the dragon gods are no more and stuff like that. His hair turned to his natural hair color. It was supposed to be red as descendants and blah blah blah. It's supposed to be red. The blonde or the light colored hair was signifying the sickness in a way. I don't know. I really don't know. And as I said, the other option is this is supposed to be the Crimson Dragon King because it looks exactly fucking like him. But why would he wake up after all this time? You know. And once again, we knew his body was just destroyed, so maybe as I said, already went over these theories, so I'm just, at this point, repeating myself. But it's been a while since we talked Yona, right? Because there was that long break in between 271 and now here 272. So, you know, if it's not at least a half an hour long review, I don't think I'm doing my job and a good service to you guys and to Yona. So, anyways, apparently the next chapter will be this month. So we're getting 2 chapters this month. That's pretty cool. When the translation comes out, will probably not be till about Halloween, I'm going to say. Probably like the end of the month. But it is what it is. We're just going to have to be patient and wait and see. But I'm looking forward for the explanation on what's going on here. By the looks of it, I think this is probably going to conclude by the end of the year at this point. I don't see us reaching the 300 chapter mark anymore, unfortunately. But we might be here in the final chapters of Yona of the Dawn, just the way this chapter ended with an obvious time skip. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'd be shocked if we reached 280 chapters. I'll be shocked. But yeah, so that's kind of a sour way. So we don't end on a sour note of maybe the series is about to end. Final part is, I didn't acknowledge it at the beginning, but there was a big character popularity poll in this issue, and number 1 was, of course, the Darkness Dragon Hawk. Of course, it was the Thunder Beast himself. He was number 1. Obviously, taking number 2 was Yona. You know, and there's still quite a wide margin between the first, second, and third. We had Hawk, Yona, and Soo-won, respectively. And I think everyone can accept them being the top 3 most popular and best written characters. But there's a huge gap. 30,000 votes, over 30,000 votes for Hawk, 24,000 for Yona, and 17,000 for Soo-won. So quite a gap. It was not close between those ones. And then as we get to the dragons, jae-ha and Zeno take 4th and 5th respectively, with Kija and Shin-ha as 6th and 7th. I think that's fair. Personally, I like Zeno the most out of the 4 dragons. But that order's pretty fair. And Shin-ha doesn't really get a whole lot to do being the introvert that he is. Kija's been with us the longest, so that makes sense. And obviously, jae-ha is just a fan favorite across the whole series, period. Getting to see Yon, basically the whole Happy Hungry bunch is on the list. And I really like that Yon's there, of course, as number 8. And having Ao, you know, being here as number 9, Now, I don't know why they're referred to as Pukuyu, because I thought the name was Ao. The whole time it's always been translated as Ao, so I don't know why here in the popularity poll it's Pukyu, but maybe that's the original name. Am I forgetting that? Anyways, yes, of course, our favorite little squirrel. We love our little squirrel. And Lily taking number 10. I'm kind of surprised by Lily taking the 10th spot, but alright. Okay, me personally, it'd be Mundok. Mundok would be up here on my top 10 list. I'd have Mundok and who else would I have? There's quite a few. Anyways, 11th is Taijun. Respect on that one. Big character development. One of the side characters with the most character development was Taijun, 100%. So love to see that. Jodo is number 12. Okay, alright. Kisok at 13. Miuzo at 14. Mundok at 15. I would put Mundok obviously higher. Korin at 16. Taiwu at 17. Algria. Now, Algria is... I actually, now that I think about it, I think I'd put Algria a little higher. I'm not... That's a tough one. Like, once again, when you start going down the character lists, it starts to go, well, wait a minute now, wait a minute, you know? Like, Gentai is not on the list. He is not in the top 20, and I'm baffled by this. And to finally end it out, Tetra at 19 and Mei Nian at 20. I don't care for Mei Nian at all, so she would not be anywhere near my personal list. But yeah, that's the list of the top 20 popular characters for probably, I'm going to say, it's the last popularity poll for Yona of the Dawn. So, anyways, yep, just thought I'd acknowledge that here as well at the end of the chapter review. That must be over 30 minutes. Yeah. Oh, 40 minutes. Well, we're doing good. We're just about past the 40-minute mark. Okay, cool. So, definitely, I don't think I missed anything. I discussed, the ending at 271 as a refresher, discussed what is the purpose of obviously, the purgatory scene, who is supposed to be the person at the end of the chapter. All things point to Hawk, but it doesn't... Everything, the hair is just wrong on multiple levels for Hawk, so, and the other two make less likely sense, but I just don't get the, yeah. And we talked about the popularity poll, so I think we covered all our bases. Hopefully, as I said, translations for chapter 273 will be out before Halloween, but once again, let the translators and stuff take their time, because they're doing us a great service, as always. And shout out to that group as well. I think they're called Project Vinland, if I recall correctly. Yeah, Project Vinland. Yeah, so shout outs to Project Vinland for doing us a great service and a great job to translate this wonderful shoujo series. So, anyways, with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as always. And we'll see all of you back here in a few weeks' time for chapter 273 of Yona of the Dawn. Looking forward to it. Hope you all are as well. Have a good one. Sayonara.